Hi, Julie Hafen here with Trendy Pilots. Today I am going to tell you guys and talk about my journey in aviation. My journey in aviation didn't begin until I was 17 years old. I did not know that becoming a pilot was even like a viable career option until I was 17. And I took a class at my high school. High school that I attended had this thing where you could get college credit and high school credit for taking courses, and it was only $30. So you could graduate high school with an associate's degree from the local, it was a college at the time, it's a university now, Utah Valley University. So I started doing that because I was like, $30, why not? And that way, instead of having to take like biology, for example, for the whole school year in high school, you could take it for just one semester and it would give you the college credit and count for a whole year of credit for high school. So it was like a win-win situation. I started doing that when I was 15, and then by the time I was 17, I'd pretty much taken most of the classes that were available, and there was a couple left. I needed one in the science elective area, and there was an aviation science class. Now, I am not gonna lie and tell you guys that I knew what it was, because I didn't. Like, I had to look it up. I can't remember if Google was even back then, but I had to look it up and find out what is aviation science. And I found out that it was about pilots. Now, I had no idea that this intro to aviation science class was going to be an intro to becoming a pilot. I showed up on the first day of class with the book I'd purchased and hadn't even opened, and that's what it was. It was cool though. Like, we went through the history of aviation, you know, the Wright brothers and hot air balloons. And then we got into the basics of, I remember it was the basics of aerodynamics. And I remember learning about angle of attack and thinking it was like the most fascinating thing ever, because you can't even see air, but they know what's going on to create lift on an airplane. It was just the first time in my life where I'd actually been interested and wanted to know more. You know, I always enjoyed English class, but it's not like I went outside of my English class to learn more English and to write books on my own. Like, I wasn't doing that. But when I took this aviation class, I was so interested in it. I went to the library and just got like more books than I'd ever be able to read, you know, and brought them home. And I just started reading them. And that's, a lot of them were on the aerodynamics, because at the time that was just such a new thing to me. I'd never thought of it before. Yeah, so I was a senior in high school. I think it was my first semester that I took this class, like the very beginning of my senior year. And after the class was over, I was just like, I'm going to be a pilot. This is what I want to do. Like, I had so much passion and so much drive for it. And I remember telling my mom, who was super supportive, I was like, hey mom, I think I'm going to be a pilot. And she was like, that's great, but you've never been in an airplane. Shouldn't you, I don't know, fly in an airplane first before you make the final decision? And I was like, Mom, that's a minor detail. Went ahead, I signed up for the program. And the nice thing was, so the college that I was taking all these courses from when I was in high school, they offered, and they still offer, an aviation program. So you can get an associate's degree, you can get a bachelor's degree, and they've expanded it more since, like there's more options. But you also do it while you do your flight training. Like, everything is there. And so you take your aviation classes in the top part of the hangar, and then you go out and go flying. It's like everything is in that one location. I signed up for the program and I started applying for scholarships because I had no money. My parents were unable to pay for my college education. And so I knew if this was something I wanted to do, I was gonna have to do it on my own. So I went out and got some scholarships. I remember getting 2 scholarships. It was about $2,000 total. I think each one was about $1,000. And in my mind, dude, I was 17. That was a ton of freaking money. And the scholarships were aviation specific. So I had to be in the aviation program and in the degree to use those scholarships. My mom and dad, for my 18th birthday, because they knew I was just so gung-ho about this. They're like, okay, she's gonna do it. We need to get her on a plane first before she like goes gung-ho and spends all this money that she, you know, doesn't have. So they did purchase me a plane ticket for my 18th birthday on Frontier Airlines down to Texas to visit my grandfather. Now, I'd only met my grandfather, I think, once before, but he got his private pilot's license, you know, after retirement and everything. So I flew on Frontier down to Texas, and then my grandpa took me up for 2 days, and I don't remember how long it was, probably 2 hours each time, up into a little Cessna. And that whole experience was so cool. Like, it really did. It just changed my life. I remember flying down on the Frontiers aircraft, and there's this older, just cute little old lady next to me. Dude, and every time we hit a little bump, and we were flying out of Salt Lake Airport in the summertime, it's always bumpy. She was like death gripping the seat. Why can't I think of what it's called? The seat handle, and she's like holding on to the ceiling, like she was just freaking out. And I remember thinking, this is so cool. And we flew through some clouds, and I was like, what? The pilots know where they're going and they can't even see where they're going. Like, it was just a life-changing experience for me. And when I flew down with my grandpa, he let me, taxi the airplane. I was terrible. I was all over the place because I, never even seen a cockpit before. I'd never seen a flight deck. The rudder pedals was weird. I was everywhere. And then we flew, and he let me fly a little bit in the air. And again, I wasn't great, but it was just incredible. The only thing I hated, and I'll just admit it now, is when my grandpa did freaking stalls. And I swear he did like 5.2 million of them just to scare me. He probably just thought it was funny. But everything else, I just loved. I came home from that, and that was probably in June of 2003, somewhere around there. And I got home, and I was just gung-ho about doing this aviation program. Like, I couldn't wait for it to start. And so I got, registered for school. I got tuition paid for and everything, and I was ready to go, and I was super excited. And then when I actually began the flight training, that was a whole new experience. Up to this point, I've just been in high school. High school is pretty easy, guys. Once you get to college, it's a new ball game. I just didn't have good enough study habits. And I didn't realize how much an aviation degree and becoming a pilot actually entailed. I thought it was just you learn how to fly an airplane, kind of like driving a car, like how hard can it be? I didn't realize you had to learn systems in depth. I knew nothing about batteries, AC or DC power, like the different types of power. I knew nothing about engines. Like, I knew engines had oil in them and you had to change it out. That was about it. I knew you had to put fuel in the airplane for it to fly, for the engine to work, but I didn't know the whole process. And honestly, it was just a lot. I was one of the very few girls that was in there, and that was just a part of it, because I did kind of feel like these guys, it's not that just that I was female, it was just that these guys knew all this stuff, and so many of them had come from aviation backgrounds. I didn't have that, and so I did get discouraged. And like I said earlier, I had $2,000, right? And I thought that would get me a private pilot's license. Now, even back in 2003, that was not enough. By December, I started school in August. By December of that year, I was, out of funds for flight training. I didn't have any more money left. And I didn't know what to do. I kind of quit. It felt like a long time, but I think it was just through the month of December and a few weeks into January, where I was just questioning, like, is this for me? Is this something I can do? Is this something I can learn? But in that time of not having it, dude, I missed it. I missed it a lot. And so I remember being alone at the new year, all by myself in this little apartment, just deciding like, okay, I've got to figure out a way to get some money. And so I contacted the financial aid department at the school, and they helped guide me to some banks, which I think the whole process is different now, but they helped guide me to some banks who would give student loans. My parents wouldn't co-sign for me, which was fine. And they also couldn't pay anything for me. It was kind of hard getting student loans. And I finally did get one bank that would give me a student loan, and it was a 12% interest rate, and it would be accruing immediately. Like, the moment I pulled out the loan, the money would be accruing. But I just knew that aviation was my dream. So I'm like, this is the only way that I see to make it happen. So I just did it. I pulled out $12,000, and it was kind of scary signing that, but I was like, someday I will be able to pay it back. I don't know how and I don't know when, but I'm just going to trust that I will be able to get that money paid off someday. Many of you probably know it's a lot more than $12,000. So I ended up pulling out more and more and more. And by the time I was done with flight training, it was about $50,000 in debt. How I paid it off and went about that whole thing, that'll be a different video. I came back, started flight training again, got a really nice booster seat that my mom actually made me that was like the perfect height for me in a DA-20. And I was just gung-ho at that point. So I started meeting with my instructor 3 days a week, and we were, and I was just studying every spare minute. In 2004, almost a year after I'd started, I finally got my private pilot certificate. And if you don't have your pilot's license yet and you're working towards it, just know that when you get that license, it is such a huge accomplishment. You'll have your discouragements along the way, but once you get that license and realize that you can do incredibly hard things, it's like the biggest confidence booster and the best motivation you'll need to keep going forward. If you are super close to that check ride, just keep moving forward, guys, and get it done, because once you pass it, it just feels incredible. So I got my license in 2004, and then pretty much every year after that, I got another license. So the following year, I got my instrument. That was in 2005. And then in 2006, I got my commercial. 2007, I got my CFI.